Hello. In part 1, I shared some rationale as to why countries might want to have an enterprise architecture. I will not pretend to be an expert on enterprise architecture. You can search the web for more information. There are also consulting companies who offer this type of service. So for this part, I will take the client perspective a la Ministry of Health and share what most MOHs might be thinking. With the National eHealth Strategy, ministries now have a set of directions showing where they should go and how they will use information technology to address the major health issues in their country. A national e-health strategy as prescribed by the toolkit will have major components, and each country, based on its own norms and culture, will formulate their own distinct strategies, but the major components should be there. Logically, after the strategy, or the where do we go question, comes the how do we get there question. The second part of the WHO ITU toolkit is about the action plan or how the country aims to go from point A to point B. This could be a simple set of activities aimed to move the country from the current baseline to the desired state. At AHIN, we believe that with proper leadership and governance, along with a properly implemented enterprise architecture, most countries can take greater and more confident strides towards achieving the goals of their strategy. What is an enterprise architecture? Simply put, it is a blueprint that can guide enterprises on the development of their information systems. It is not much different from the blueprint of a house. It could be a simple drawing that shows where the foundations lie, how the electrical wires are placed, or how the water supply is separated from the disposal system. It could also show how the first floor should be structured so that the upper floors could be built safely, and how existing power lines and plumbing can be extended cost effectively. The blueprint is so important that it should be first drawn before attempting to build in order to avoid costly revisions later on. It also provides a good estimate of what materials need to be bought, and if budget is limited, what priority areas get built first before the others. The same benefits also apply to city planning. Quick research, and in this part of the world we call it Google as a verb, showed that there are about 4, and there may be more, enterprise architecture frameworks or methodologies to choose from. There is Zachman's, the US Federal Enterprise Architecture, the Open Group Architecture Framework, and the Gardner EA approach. Again, I do not present myself as an expert in any of them, but I found this interesting blog detailing their differences from Roger Sessions. In his blog, Roger Sessions shared the rationale behind the need for EA. He says you probably need enterprise architecture if IT systems have become unmanageably complex and increasingly costly to maintain. IT systems are hindering the organization's ability to respond to current and future market conditions in a timely and cost-effective manner. Or mission-critical information is consistently out of date and or just plain wrong. Or a culture of distrust exists between the business and technology sides of the organization. Although most developing countries do not have the same degree of sophistication as developed countries, I must say that some of these issues listed by Roger Sessions are relevant to our context, and these are especially items 2, 3, and 4. So what did I get from my quick search? And I try my best to quote them directly. According to the official website of Zachman, it is the fundamental structure for enterprise architecture, and thereby yields the total set of descriptive representations relevant for describing an enterprise. Or, according to Sessions, the Zachman framework is actually a taxonomy for organizing architectural artifacts. In other words, design documents, specifications, and models that takes into account both who the artifact targets are, for example, the business owner and builder, and what particular issue, for example, data and functionality, is being addressed. Let's hear it from John Zachman himself. He says that the EA framework, as it applies to enterprises, is simply a logical structure for classifying and organizing the descriptive representations of an enterprise that are significant to the management of the enterprise as well as to the development of the enterprise's systems. The Open Group Architecture Framework is best known by its acronym TOGAF. TOGAF is owned by the Open Group. As shown in the figure, TOGAF divides an enterprise architecture into four categories as follows. The business architecture describes the processes the business uses to meet its goals. The data architecture describes how the enterprise stores data and organizes them and accesses them. The application architecture describes how specific applications are designed and how they interact with each other. And the technical architecture describes the hardware and software infrastructure that supports applications and their interactions. TOGAF describes itself as a framework, but the most important part of TOGAF is the architecture development method, better known as ADM. ADM is the recipe for creating architecture, and a recipe can be categorized as a process. Given that ADM is the most visible part of TOGAF, Sessions categorizes TOGAF overall as an architectural process instead of either an architectural framework or a methodology. As an architectural process, TOGAF complements Zachman. So essentially, Zachman tells you how to categorize your artifacts, while TOGAF gives you a process for creating them. As the Federal Enterprise Architecture Program Management Office says, the US FEA taken in toto provides a common language and framework to describe and analyze IT investments, enhance collaboration, and ultimately transform the federal government into a citizen-centered, results-oriented, and market-based organization as set forth in the President's management agenda. FEA is the most complete of all the methodologies discussed so far by Sessions. It has both a comprehensive taxonomy like Zachman and an architectural process like TOGAF. FEA can be viewed as either a methodology for creating an enterprise architecture or the result of applying that process to a particular enterprise, in this case, the US government. Gardner is the most difficult EA process or framework to describe. According to Sessions, taxonomy like Zachman, or a process like TOGAF, or a complete methodology like FEA. Instead, it is what he defines as a practice. It is the enterprise architecture practice of one of the best-known IT research and consulting organizations in the world, which is Gardner. So, for me, from how I understand Sessions' description of Gardner, it's basically a consulting company with a lot of expertise in enterprise architecture. I think it might be similar to Cleveland Clinic or Texas Heart Institute. So if you have a heart ailment, you just go where you think you can get the best help. You can start reading by yourself about how to do their techniques and methodologies, but in the end, you end up agreeing that it's best that they perform the procedure themselves. Gardner does that for enterprise architecture. Again, I encourage you to do your own research on these different approaches. Showing small graphics for each one does not do them justice. Each of them definitely deserves a deeper look. At AHIN, we decided early in our strategic plan that we needed to build capacity for 1. Leadership and governance for e-health, and 2. Standards and interoperability. Led by these strategic action points, we agreed that we needed to get a core group from each country trained and certified on IT governance and enterprise architecture. This core group will then form the NIDUS for their country and will be a shared resource for the region. Hopefully, they can spur more structured and systematic approach to implementing national e-health strategies. However, not all of these methodologies or frameworks have readily accessible certification programs, which was an important requirement by AHIN. Only Zachman and TOGAF had certification programs. Our first group of trainees in the Ministry of Health Mongolia underwent TOGAF, as it had a global network of trainers, and more importantly, their national government had begun studying TOGAF for its whole of government enterprise architecture. The TOGAF training in Ulaanbaatar, which I joined, received favorable reviews, and we will have another offering in Kuala Lumpur this March for 6 more countries. After this, we hope to form an Architecture Advisory Council among the participants to advise our member countries on EA matters. What do we aim to achieve with EA certification? Well, first is an awareness of EA's value and its short and long-term benefits towards successful implementation of the National E-Health Strategy. An EA provides structures, methods, and systems that will allow countries to manage the increasing complexity that comes with the deluge of information. With the surge in mobile app development, almost anyone now can develop an app, and I hope you all do using Sana with this course. There is a strong demand for an underlying strategy and EA to place your app within the larger ecosystem of applications and solutions in your country. An EA is important in providing order to the sea of health information. On the other hand, the lack of an EA could result in paralysis and inability to adapt to the increasing demand for health information by civil society. In summary, an enterprise architecture is the blueprint that systematically guides stakeholders towards achieving their enterprise goals. For ministries of health, that goal is to use IT effectively to solve pressing national health issues where appropriate. The enterprise architecture then is the map that will guide them towards that goal. In my next presentation, I will discuss how we are adopting EA for health in the Philippines.